Today we'll be working in my workbook called Joseph, Son, Slave, Prisoner, and Commander. Hmm. And this covers Genesis 37, 40, Genesis chapters 37 through 41. And this will be our first chapter, but I also wanted to go through this timeline really quick of Joseph's life, which we may be coming back to occasionally during the book. We believe he is the 11th of 12 sons, and then we have where he travels to Canaan with the family about the year 6 years of age. Now, our story starts when he's 17 years old. This book starts, that is, and this book will take us clear through probably 37 years old, or even 39 years old, actually. This so we'll cover quite a number of years of his life. So we are going to be doing chapter 1, which is Joseph and his dreams. Joseph and his dreams, Genesis 37, 1 through 11. So Genesis 37, 1. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. Although this verse really ends the prior biblical emphasis on Jacob, it's a great place to summarize where we are with this next section of Genesis starts. The location. Jacob and his household are now located near Hebron, where his father Isaac lived until his death. That's up here at this first arrow. Isaac lived until his death. Esau and his household have moved entirely over to the area around Mount Seir, later known as Edom, and that's the second arrow here. Ages. Since the next verse will tell us that Joseph is 17, we can reasonably figure the ages of everybody else. Since Jacob was 91 when Joseph was born, he is now 108. Rachel has died and giving birth to Benjamin. Leah is probably 44 years of age. Although we never know the ages of Bilhah and Zilpah, they are perhaps 5 years younger than Leah. The sons, in order of age, are Reuben, 24, Simeon, 23, Levi, 22, Judah, 21, Dan, 20, Naphtali, 19, Gad, 19, Asher, 18, Issachar, 18, Zebulun, 17, Joseph, 17, Dinah, the daughter we know of, is 17, and Benjamin is 1. Rachel and Leah's sons are Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Bilhah and Zilpah's sons are Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. I realize again the reason why there's 2 children born in the same year several times is that Jacob had children from 4 different women. Now the time frame. Although we have already covered Isaac's death in the prior book in Genesis 35:29, in actuality, this story predates that one. So Isaac is still alive, although never mentioned in this story. If Joseph is 17, then Isaac is 168, and he will live for another 12 years. Jacob and his family have lived around Hebron when this story starts for about 2 years, but will continue to live here until they move to Egypt 22 years later due to a famine. The scriptures continue. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. The phrase, "this is the account of," is the last of 10 scriptures that start this way in the book of Genesis. Moses uses this phrase to either start a genealogy or start a new emphasis. In this, he changes from focusing on Jacob to now focusing on Joseph. How old is Joseph? He's 17. Therefore, based on the normal customs, he would be participating in sheep herding with his brothers for 2 years or more. What was Joseph doing? He was tending the flocks with his brothers. Some Bible scholars will tell you that tending the flocks is different than sheep herding. It is a managerial position versus actually working with the flocks. Is Jacob already considering Joseph more responsible than his brothers? Or is Jacob treating him special due to being his favorite? Or are Bible scholars just nitpicking, seeing something that isn't there? We don't know. Whose sons were Joseph tending the flocks with? He was tending the flocks with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. Therefore, looking at page 6, these brothers would be Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. A possible reason for Joseph just to be with them is that there were several flocks. This may have been the younger men's flocks. What did Joseph bring to their father? A bad report about them. So what is your initial thought about Joseph? Is he a tattletale, or does he have a higher moral character than his brothers? I think for myself, I think at this point he has he feels more connected to Jacob and then his brothers. And so he is doing what Jacob has wanted him to do, is to keep track, watch over everything. Definitely could see also an attitude of Joseph. We could definitely read that in there too. We don't know if it's true, but we could definitely read that in there as well. Genesis 37:3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And we also know it's because Rachel gave him birth. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that his father loved him more than any of them, they hated Joseph and could not speak a kind word to Joseph. What is the reason listed here that Jacob loved Joseph more than any other sons? It's because he was born in his old age. There's really only 7 years difference between Joseph the youngest and Reuben the oldest, but Joseph has both been the youngest and the only son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, for 15 years. Now, he isn't the youngest now. Benjamin is already born, but Benjamin's still a baby. What did Jacob make or have made for Joseph? The ornate robe, also known as the coat of many colors. This is called an ornate robe. We also know it as a coat of many colors. The reason for the slight confusion is that the Hebrew word for this coat is unique. We do know that this type of robe was given to men and women who were not to do hard labor or are part of royalty. Some believe the difference in the robe would be long sleeves versus no sleeves rather than color, as it would be harder to work in long sleeves. Another example of this type of robe is shown in the scripture below. In this scripture in Samuel, the word is translated as ornate, many colors, or long sleeved, depending on the translation. Scripture is 2 Samuel 13:18. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing an ornate robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. How did the rest of the brothers feel about this special treatment? They hated Joseph and would not speak a kind word to him. They also did not treat Joseph very well in that fact that they did not speak a kind word to him. We do not see Joseph's reaction to his brother's unkind treatment of him. What do you think he is feeling? Well, he certainly can feel like, wait a second, why do you not love me, care for me? Depends on how much he's concentrating on Jacob. But this is perpetuates the whole issue. Jacob is playing favoritism to Joseph. Joseph is not being treated well by his brothers, so he then relates more to Jacob than his brothers. So it's a perpetual thing. Scriptures continue. Genesis 37:5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" They hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Number one, it is easy to see why his older brothers would have gotten upset with this dream Joseph has. Why do you think Joseph tells it to them? I mean, obviously, Joseph is giving the indication that he's going to rule over his brothers. His brothers are all older than him and had a lot more experience and wisdom than him. So obviously, his brothers would be upset by hearing the dream. There was already a difference between them. So why do you think Joseph tells them? It could be innocence in the fact that he doesn't really know how much his brothers hate him, or it could be arrogance. We don't know. Who is really causing all the problem between the 11 sons? Is it Jacob showing favoritism to Joseph or the others? Or is it that Joseph already sees himself as better than the rest? Or is it a mixture of both? I think right now it's kind of a mixture of both. Jacob is favoring him and Joseph is eating it up. Um, um, a young man of 17 usually doesn't realize how much wisdom his older brothers and everybody has. So he is making decisions based on how he's raised, I think. Number 3, based on what we know so far, what are some of the reasons that Joseph's brother think Joseph ruling over them is ridiculous? 1, he's the youngest. 2, he has no experience. And 3, he now has an ornate robe. So he's never had to do hard labor. So why is he supervising us? Is kind of what they're thinking. So the scriptures continue. Genesis 37:9. Then he had another dream. This is Joseph, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Okay, considering the reaction he received before, why do you think Joseph told his second dream to his brothers? Again, either naivety or trying to show off. I think he's too young to have wisdom of consideration of other people's feelings, especially when he's been raised the way he's been raised. Despite what you may think of Joseph, think of the fact that if he had not irritated his brothers as much as he did, then he would not be in the location in the future he needs to save his family. So God may be part of all this as well. The second time he told the dream, who additionally did he tell it to? His father. What was Jacob's reaction to the dream? He rebuked Joseph, saying, You actually think we're all going to worship you? Come on, you're being ridiculous here. Here we have a problem. What does Jacob mean by Joseph's mother? We know that Rachel is already dead and that this is not a story that happened earlier in time, as Joseph is 17, which means it's been 2 years since Rachel died. We also know that when Jacob's family goes to Egypt and this prophecy comes true, all the remaining mothers, that is Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, are all dead. So why is the word mother used? It would have to be symbolic. It would have to generally mean your ancestors. Number 4, despite his initial reaction, what is Jacob's second reaction? He keeps it in his mind, what is being said. Special insight. This scripture is important in helping to explain Revelation 12:1. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Due to this dream of Joseph's, we understand that the prophecy in Revelation is also about Israel as a nation. So now we've come to the last of this chapter, and so we go through the crossword. Number 3. Let me make sure I have my answers here just in case. Joseph said his brother sheaves of grain would bow down to his sheaf, right? Bowed. Number 5, Jacob rebuked Joseph for telling them of his second dream. Number 7, what land did Jacob and his family live in? The land of Canaan. In 8, in Joseph's first dream, he and his brothers are binding sheaves of grain. 9, Joseph was tending flocks with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Then one down, Jacob made an ornate robe for Joseph. 2, how old is Joseph? 17. 4, Joseph's second dream was about the sun, moon, and the 11 stars. 6, which wife of Jacob had died? Rachel. And we are often heard this ornate robe is called a coat of many colors. So that's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.